In this module, we will look at how data and technology can be used to increase equity in education. In the first video, we will look into what are data and technology gaps. But first, let's consider why data and technology are so important. Data is one way to inform us what's happening in the world, and technology can provide tools to solve problems that we face. According to data, there are currently 244 million children that are out of school between the ages of 6 and 18. To obtain this figure, multiple sources of data were checked and cross-referenced by the UNESCO Institute for Statistics and the Global Education Monitoring Report. Because of this data, we have an idea of the global picture when it comes to how many children are missing out on the right to quality education. It shows us who we need to target and serve. Data is key to informing major policy decisions and responses at the national level, including budget choices and resource allocation. It helps education to be more efficient and effective by identifying needs and those who need most support. Data also supports research, monitoring, and evaluating efforts to better understand what worked and what didn't, and what educational disparities or inequities still exist. But to be able to gather and interpret this data, we need tools. Technology has the potential to better collect, analyze, and utilize data and help in reducing gaps in reaching the most vulnerable and marginalized. It also helps to provide higher quality educational opportunities to those groups. For example, by providing connectivity and devices in remote areas, learners can access high quality education content regardless of their location. It can also include assistive technologies for those who need additional support, or providing technologies that enhance the learning experience through developing digital skills. However, there are two main barriers when it comes to data and technology to ensure that they can increase equity: missing and scattered data and the digital divide. Missing and scattered data. The most important barrier to using data for equitable education is the fact that data is missing and scattered. According to the UNESCO Institute for Statistics, countries are only able to report on half of the data required for monitoring of SDG global indicators. This includes data on out-of-school children and youth, and more specific data related to educational equity or spending. Not only is data missing, but it's also scattered. What does this mean? First, data is collected across different ministries and sectors, which make it scattered. So data on one child with disabilities, for instance, might be found under data from Ministry of Health and not under the Ministry of Education. Or data on one child workers may be found under the Ministry of Labor, which makes it harder to consider them within the context and the data on education. Sharing data across ministries and sectors is so important because it helps to paint the full picture and capture social and economic factors that affect equity in education, such as parents' income level, child health, or housing situation. Another important issue here is the fact that data is often not disaggregated, meaning that it is not separated or organized by group such as gender, age, or wealth. According to the International Institute for Education Planning, data of out-of-school children and youth is rarely disaggregated by sex, wealth, disability, identity or status, language, and ethnicity. And data on non-formal education is rarely integrated with the Ministry of Education data. If you don't disaggregate data by group, whether by gender or age, but also by household income quintile, health, location, identity, or migration status, and other factors, it is difficult to target solutions towards them. In more extreme cases, such as the lack of data on migrants and other vulnerable groups, the fact that they are not counted means that they are not recognized and that they cannot be reached. Given the protection and identification of these groups under international law, it is essential to be able to monitor their status and plan intervention through collecting data. This aggregated data captures these different variables and helps to identify learners so that they can access education and takes into account well-being and socio-economic factors for improving quality in education. By using data from different sources, it would be possible to better identify and forecast potential problems and inform the effect of interventions to better mitigate them. This highlights just how important it is for learners to have access to connectivity and devices so that they and their learning can be better monitored. Increasing digital divide. The increasing digital divide is a major barrier for equity in education and contributes to the gaps in the data. This means that there are widening disparities between those that are benefiting from technology and others who are not. One of the first issues here become apparent during the COVID-19 pandemic as learners turn to distance learning from home. Only 43% of learners worldwide had access to internet at home at the onset of the pandemic. For those in remote locations or areas with very limited infrastructure such as electricity or connectivity, their ability to participate in online learning was especially limited. But even if they had connectivity, statistics show that only half of learners worldwide, that's 826 million students, who did not have access to a household computer at the start of the pandemic. In Asia Pacific region, only 41% of the population had access to computer at home. This not only leads to a learning loss for them, but it also reduced their capacity to obtain digital skills and widen the gap in learning outcomes between urban and rural learners, between those from higher and lower socio-economic income groups, and between boys and girls. When it comes to technologies that can enhance or accelerate learning, one significant gap regarding equity is the increasing wealth gap and inequitable resourcing of schools. Some schools may be able to bring in expensive equipment, whether devices or assistive technologies for robotics, for instance, while others may not if they will need to pool their resources to serve more underprivileged learners and vulnerable groups. This increasing technology gap further increases digital skills gap that again increase disparities. Ensuring that all learners have access to technologies, connectivity, devices, and skills is crucial for educational equity. In recognition of this, the UN has already spearheaded a global initiative on digital learning in the 9 most populous countries. Overall, data and technology are crucial tools for improving educational equity. But with missing and scattered data, it can be hard to identify marginalized groups and find the best way to support them. Lack of connectivity, technology, equipment, and increasing digital divide also means some of the world's population is unable to benefit from distance learning online. But despite these barriers, countries are turning more and more to data and technology to increase equity. New innovations bring higher quality education for those who are most vulnerable, as we will explore in the next chapter of this module.